Hello folks, welcome to Edipedia World and I am Abhinay Gupta. So today again we'll continue with the topic compromises, arrangements and amalgamation of companies. And once more you have to remember that the sections that we will be referring to in this chapter will belong to the Companies Act 1956 and not the Companies Act 2013. So far what have we seen in the chapter? We have understood the basic meaning behind the word compromises, arrangements and amalgamation. We have understood the procedure of how the compromise or arrangement takes place with the intervention of the court, how the application is sent, how the court reviews the application and orders for the meeting, how do they refer to the CG, what does it do with its representation, how is the meeting held, what are the content of the notice and stuff. So that was half of the procedural part. Today we'll move ahead and continue with the so-called section 391 to 393. So basically what we deal with today is the stage 6. We have dealt with stage 1 to 5 in our previous lecture. I hope you have gone through the lecture before coming to this because it's a continuation. So if you haven't, please look into that lecture, understand it, learn it, and then we come out to this so that you will be able to grasp it in a more fluent and effective manner. So what does stage 6 has to say? Stage 6, the court is to be satisfied that the scheme is bona fide. The scheme that the applicant has given to the court will first be satisfied. Now we'll see what are the bases based on which the court satisfies itself. Now, we know it's a well-known fact that all the applications of the scheme cannot be 100% perfect. There has to be something missing or some other points. It cannot be foolproof, right? There is always a possibility, always a scope to find out faults in the scheme, right? But a little bit of fault, a little bit of mistake does not render it non-significant, right? Does not render it sufficient, does not give it a sufficient reason to disqualify the scheme. So the court has to be reasonable at its end, right? So for this, the Supreme Court of India has discussed the procedure that is to be followed to evaluate the scheme and to judge whether or not is it bona fide. And that was done in the case of Mihir H. Mafatlal versus Mafatlal Industries Limited back in 1996. So let us see what was the parameters that the Supreme Court has decided to go through before deciding whether or not the scheme is justified or bona fide. So to judge that, the scheme needs to satisfy the following basic conditions. The first being that it should comply with the statutory provisions. Yes, that is very important. So with statutory provisions, what we understand is that the court needs to be satisfied that the meeting was duly held and conducted in the manner and as per the direction given by the court. It has also to be satisfied that the compromise and arrangement, the scheme that they have gotten, is about a real compromise and arrangement. Right? There is nothing to submerge and portray something different. Right? It has to be a real compromise and arrangement whereby somebody loses and somebody gains something or the other. And it is not a total surrender, as we have discussed in the first class for this topic. And again, the court needs to be satisfied that there was a competent majority that has decided the scheme, that has voted for the scheme. That majority fairly represented all the shareholders or all the creditors of the company. And also that the provisions of the Companies Act, the Act of 1956, all of them have been satisfied. The statutory provisions required by the sections have been satisfied. Next is, it should disclose all material facts. Now, what are the material facts that it wants to be disclosed? The material fact would include the latest financial position of the company, the latest available auditor's report of the company, and if there is any investigation that is pending on the company's end, or the decision is yet pending, it could be for or against the company, then the details of those proceedings will also have to be given. Right? So those are the material facts for the court, and this is what the court needs to understand and look into, and hence these facts have to be provided to the court. Next is the fair representation in the meeting. Now, when the meeting of the member or the creditor was called for, right, the court has to be satisfied that the people who were present in the meeting fairly represented all the members or the class of members for whom the meeting was called. Right? So that class is fairly represented by those who came and who attended the meeting. Then it needs to be satisfied that the scheme that the company has brought forward is commercially viable. Like that will benefit the company in the long run on its economic front. Right? It should be in public interest. It should not be hampering the interest of the public in any way. And the scheme should be fair and reasonable. Now, what do you actually mean by fair and reasonable? It is like it should be fair for all of them. There should be no majority ruling, no submergence of the minority, right? The majority who has passed the scheme should be reasonable, rational, prudent, right? And the scheme should be workable. The scheme should be feasible, and it should even be financially viable. Right? You should have the finances, and it should not affect the company to a large extent as per the market is concerned. Right? And it should be practical. That is the most important thing. And also that the scheme is not designed for any oblique or ulterior motive. So if the court is satisfied with these facts, the court will consider the scheme to be bona fide. And then we can move ahead with the same. And if the court considers that the scheme is not bona fide for any case and that it is done to cover up some of the misdeeds of the directors of the company, as it has already been taken place in the case of Pioneer Dyeing House Limited versus Dr. Shankar Vishnu Marathe. Over there, the scheme was cancelled. It was not sanctioned by the court because the scheme was passed to cover up some of the misdeeds of the directors. Right? Now, in order to reject a scheme, if the court wants to reject a scheme, it has to prove that the scheme is obviously unfair, patently unfair, and unfair to the meanest intelligence. Now, what do you mean by obviously unfair? By obviously unfair, you mean that on the face, if you go with the literal interpretation of the scheme, you understand that yes, it is submerging the interest of some or the other person or the minority. Right? It is unfair on the face of it. Right? But patently unfair, you mean that there is nothing in contrary to prove that it is fair. Right? But obviously unfair means it is unfair by the face of it, by the literal interpretation of it. Patently unfair means, okay, even if we consider it not to be unfair, you don't have a point to prove that it is fair. So it is patently unfair. And unfair to the meanest intelligence. That will mean that even if you give it to the person with a nullified level of intelligence, with no intelligence at all, even that person can say that yeah, it is unfair, it is being unfair. So that is the extreme. So the court will reject the order if it is sure that it is obviously unfair, patently unfair, and unfair to the meanest intelligence. These are the words of the act, the text of the act, and it is recommended to follow these words itself. Right? Instead of giving an explanation to the same in the examination, students are requested to use these words in the examination. Right? It can be used as a phrase, obviously unfair, patently unfair, unfair to the meanest intelligence. Right? Now, we'll consider that the scheme is approved by the court so that we can move ahead to the next stages. Right? So once the scheme is approved, like once the court is satisfied, it will approve the scheme. So stage 7 will be the sanction of the scheme by the court. And once the scheme is sanctioned by the court, it has a binding effect. It will be binding on the creditors or the members or any class of them, and it will also be binding on the liquidator and on the company. So if you remember that in the first stage we mentioned that the application had to be sent to the court. If you refer to that stage again, you had 4 people who were allowed to send the application to the court. They were the company, the creditors, the members, and the liquidators. So once the scheme is sanctioned, it will be binding on again all the 4 of them. Maybe the creditor, the member, the liquidator, and the company itself. So moving ahead, stage 8 will be filing the order of the court with the registrar of the company. So once you have received the order of the court, now it is your duty to go and file the order of the court to the registrar of the company. and only after a certified copy of the order is filed with the registrar is that it will be effective. And until such filing, the sanctioned scheme will remain dormant, and no one can proceed with any action for or against what has been decided, because it has not yet come into existence. Right? It will qualify only once the certified copy is submitted with the registrar of the company. Next is stage 9, which says that the copy of the order is to be annexed to the memorandum of association also. So why do we require to annex a copy of the order with the memorandum? So it has a very basic purpose. So that any person who is dealing with the company, right, will have the notice of the scheme with him. Because if you're dealing with a company, you will obviously take the memorandum of the company and go through it. So once you're going through the memorandum, you will also have this order attached to it, where you can see that, okay, this was the scheme that was being passed, that has been qualified, and the arrangements or the compromise has taken place. And so the new condition or the new state of the company stands the way it is today, right? Now, once the court has approved the scheme, right, once every procedure is done, it has been filed with the ROC, it has come into existence, it has been filed in the memorandum, right? So it is omnipresent everywhere now. The scheme is going ahead. Now it is the responsibility of the court to see and supervise whether the scheme is actually being workable, whether is it actually coming into existence, whether it is working out well. So supervision and modification of the scheme is the responsibility of the court. So once it supervises and it finds that the scheme is not being workable, or there is some other obstruction, the court has the discretion or has the right to modify the scheme even after it has been sanctioned, after it has been submitted with the ROC. The court has the discretion to modify it at any point of time, and that is to be done in order to make it workable. Right? And even after repeated efforts of the court, if the scheme falls unworkable for some reason, right, if it is not being practically very feasible, then the court will have to order the winding up of the company. That is the last resort available with the court. And this order may be passed suo motu by the court on its own will, or on application made by the creditor, company, or any person who was interested in this scheme. And the court may also ask for a report of working of the scheme. And then, considering the report, it may give out the direction as it deems fit. So now if we recall all the stages, then we see that the stage 1 is sending an application to the court. The stage 2 was the direction of the court to hold the meeting of the members or the creditors. Stage 3 was the notice given by the court to the central government in order to take its representation. Stage 4 was the information about the compromise and arrangement being circulated to the members and creditors. Right? All the terms, the effects, the interest and everything as we have discussed. Stage 5 was the approval of the scheme. Right? It has to be done by the majority of the member holding 75% of the shares. Then stage 6 was that the court has to be satisfied that the scheme is bona fide before approving it. And we have seen the parameters how the court is being satisfied, and that were laid down by the Supreme Court. Right? And that was in the case of Mihir H. Mafatlal versus Mafatlal Industries Limited. And then if the court found it to be feasible and workable, the scheme was sanctioned by the court. That was stage 7. And then in the stage 8, you had to file a certified copy of the scheme to the ROC of the company. And only then it had to come into existence and it would be effective and binding on the creditors, members, liquidators, company and everybody. Right? And then we have seen that a copy has to be attached with the memorandum so that every person who is dealing with the company will get to see it. And finally, the court has to monitor and supervise the scheme regularly, and if required, it will modify it, and if it is still unworkable, it will call for winding up. Right? So this was the procedural part of how compromise and arrangements take place. So with this, we'll wind up the class today, right? And we'll proceed with the chapter in our next lecture. So until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you.